Year 946 AD. A powerful army rushes from Kyiv towards Iskorosten, populated by the tribe of Drevlians, Kyiv's old nemesis. The army is led by the regent of Kyiv, known and respected by people as extremely wise and strong ruler, who tragically lost her husband just 2 years earlier. Her conquest is driven by love, despair, and revenge. My name is Operator Starsky, and this is the story of Olga of Kyiv and her legendary vengeance. Let's scroll back just a bit. It's year 944. 200 years before Moscow even emerged on the map, Kyiv was a famous stronghold located on the bank of majestic river Borisfan, modern Dnipro. The kingdom of Kyiv Rus was a powerful civilization in the Eastern Europe ruled by the legendary dynasty of Rurikovich. At the city gates, Olga, young wife of the Kievan ruler, is meeting the army of her husband, Ihor the Old. Many months ago, his army departed westwards to collect taxes from the surrounding tribes, but Olga cannot see her man among the soldiers. A grim commander tells her shocking news, which bring tears to her eyes. Back in those days, Ihor the Old was known for his raids down the Dnipro River, reaching as far as Byzantium and Azerbaijan. Raiding was a common practice in the Rurikovich family, descendants of the Scandinavian Kanaks. According to the different sources, Rurik was a warlord from Scandinavia, sometimes associated with the legendary Rorik of Dorestad, but as of today there's not enough sources to confirm this. Russians believe that Rurik was a ruler of Novgorod, but according to historical evidence, Novgorod only emerged almost 300 years after his death. One thing is known for sure: the rulers of Kyiv had really strong connections with the Scandinavians, sometimes referred to as Vikings. In winter time, when ice would not allow to use the Dnipro for transportation, instead of raiding his neighbors, Ihor would roam around his realm, collecting taxes from numerous tribes. During his last trip, which unfortunately turned tragic, he collected the taxes from Drevlians, a powerful tribe known for its constant rivalry with Kyiv. According to different sources, Ihor decided that the taxes from this tribe were not sufficient. Nobody can tell for sure who was the greediest, Ihor or Drevlians, but in the end of his travel he decides to send majority of his troops home, and guarded by just a small group of bodyguards, Ihor returns to the land of Drevlians to collect more taxes. When the Drevlians learned about his return, they ambush and capture Ihor not far from Iskorosten. His death is extremely horrible. According to the sources, 2 trees were bent down and the ruler of Kyiv was tied to them. Then Drevlians released the trees, tearing Ihor the Old apart. In Kyiv, Olga learns about the death of her husband. She realizes that not only the kingdom has lost its ruler, what's even worse, her family lost a husband and a father. Ihor's only son, Prince Sviatoslav, is only a couple of years old. Olga becomes his regent. According to the existing rules, she cannot be a queen of the Kievan kingdom. However, while Sviatoslav is growing up, Olga introduces a lot of incredibly important decisions. Regulated taxation was officially adopted across the kingdom, ensuring the regular income. Olga makes peace with Constantinople and adopts Christianity. She sends messengers to Germans asking them for a Christian bishop who would help spread the word of God among the pagan tribes of the Kievan Rus in order to solidify the society. But all these events will only happen years later. At this very point, Olga accepts the pledge of her husband's army and works really hard to keep the kingdom under control. What about Drevlians? Back in Iskorosten, the young chief of the tribe, Mal of Drevlians, same man who ambushed and killed King Ihor, decides to send his messengers to Kyiv. No, he doesn't want to apologize. He wants to become a ruler, and the only way to achieve it is marry Olga. 20 best Drevlian men arrived to Kyiv on a boat. Olga meets the messengers with a wide smile on her face. She orders her men to carry the whole boat to her palace to honor important guests. What the Drevlians don't know is that they won't be having a feast in the royal castle today. Instead, Olga's soldiers carry the boat to a deep pit in front of the castle and throw it down. Standing on the edge of the pit, Olga asks the Drevlians what do they think about the honor that she had shown them. The messengers on the bottom of the pit reply that their fate seems to be even more chilling than the death of King Ihor. After that, Olga commands to bury the boat and all 20 men alive. Shortly after that, she sends a message to the Drevlians inviting the best man of the tribe to her palace. Convinced that his 20 messengers succeeded and Olga accepted the marriage offer, Chief Mal sends a group of his best men to Kyiv. A delegation of nobles, warlords and merchants arrived to Kyiv, honorably welcomed by Olga and her troops at the gates. The guests are then offered to take a hot, relaxing bath after a long trip, and the men are brought to the royal bath, where they can drink and relax before attending the royal feast. But tonight, Olga plans to celebrate alone. As soon as the guests are locked inside the bath, she commands her men to set it on fire. The whole elite of the Drevlian tribe is killed in the blazing flames overwhelming the building. Olga herself observes the horrible execution with a cold smile until the last man stops screaming. According to the scripts, Olga doesn't stop there. She sends another message to Drevlians proposing to organize a mourning feast at the grave of her husband. She says, "This time I'm visiting you, thus prepare plenty of meat in the city where my husband was killed. Let me cry over his grave and mourn my man." Guarded by just a small group of guards, Olga arrives to the place near Iskorosten where her husband was executed. She commands her men to make a tall barrow above the grave and expects the Drevlians to join the feast. It is unclear why Chief Mal didn't attend the feast himself. Probably he was traveling far from Iskorosten and didn't receive the message. At the barrow, his men are surprised to see Olga with just a small group of bodyguards. They ask her, "Where are our men that were sent to talk to you?" She replies with a smile, "Your men are coming here together with the warriors of my husband." Unfortunately for them, the Drevlians don't understand the sinister joke. The feast begins and Olga commands her men to serve the Drevlians. They constantly fill their glasses and make sure the Drevlian warriors feel relaxed and convenient. In the end of the feast, when majority of the invited members of the tribe fall asleep, Olga tells her warriors to raise their glasses for the Drevlian tribe and leaves. This serves as a command. The Kievan soldiers who kept sober all day raised their glasses for the drunk and unconscious Drevlians and then unsheathed their swords. The feast turns into a complete butchery. When the sun rises, the horrified citizens of Iskorosten find the remains of their army completely slaughtered and slashed to pieces, soaking the grave of King Ihor in their own blood. Together with her men, Olga returns to Kyiv. On her way back, she takes a final look at the walls of Iskorosten, slowly disappearing behind the horizon. She knows for sure that without taking the city, her revenge will not be complete. In Kyiv, shortly after her arrival, Olga gathers the troops. Early in the morning of the year 946, the army of Kyiv, led by Olga herself, marches towards Iskorosten. This raid will go down in history as the final revenge of Olga, becoming a legend for the next centuries. In Iskorosten, the Drevlian chief Mal is absolutely furious and most likely scared as well. He also gathers an army and commands his troops to prepare for defense. Despite losing their best men, Drevlians manage to gather an impressive force and lock inside the city, protected by its reliable walls. Without any sufficient resistance, Olga and her army pillage and conquer all the Drevlian lands surrounding Iskorosten, but the city itself is not willing to surrender because the citizens are afraid of Olga's revenge. The army of Kyiv besieges Iskorosten, and several attacks conducted by Olga's troops fail. The siege of Iskorosten continues for about a year. Both armies are pretty much exhausted, and the situation looks like a solid stalemate. This is when Olga decides to talk to the Drevlians. According to Nestor, the scriptor, she negotiates with the citizens of Iskorosten. She says, "What do you expect staying here? Do you want to starve to death, not willing to pay the tax? The rest of your towns are already taken, and the people are peacefully cultivating their land." And the Drevlians replied, "We would be happy to just pay the tax, but we know that you are willing to revenge your deceased husband. I have already revenged my husband when you came to Kyiv for the first time and second time, and the third time when my husband was mourned at his grave. Thus, I won't revenge anymore. I only want a small tax from you, and after the truce with you is established, I will go back." The Drevlians then asked, "So what do you want from us? We will happily give you our furs and meat." And Olga replied to this, "Neither you have meat nor furs. I don't want much from you though. Let every household bring me 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows. I don't demand an unbearable tax from you like my husband did. Thus, I'm asking you for this small one. You have suffered long under the siege, so let me only have this." Back in the days when the tribes populating the territory of modern Ukraine were mostly pagan, such demand would not raise any question. In the Slavic world, the birds were often sacrificed to the pagan gods. The Drevlians, obviously thinking that it is the main purpose of her request, gather birds from every household of Iskorosten and deliver them to Olga. When the last birds are collected from the Drevlians and the tribe can finally relax, Olga gives the birds to her soldiers. She commands to tie a piece of cloth to each bird's legs. As the sun sets, the soldiers ignite the fire and release the birds. What happens next will go down in history. The pigeons return to their homes carrying the smoldering pieces of cloth attached to their legs. The sparrows, known for settling just under the roofs of the houses, return to their nests. In just a while, tremendous fire overwhelms the whole city of Iskorosten. According to Nestor, the scriptor, every single household is burning, and there is no way to put out the flames. The desperate citizens run for their life. Outside the city walls, they are met by Olga's troops. She commands her warriors to kill and capture as many Drevlians as possible. The army catches the remains of the tribe's elders, including the chief Mal himself. Olga then tells her men to execute the elders. They are ruthlessly burned at the stake. The only person who survives the carnage is Mal. He's doomed to spend the rest of his days in the darkest dungeon of Kyiv. Olga observes the smoldering ashes of Iskorosten, formerly a powerful stronghold, now an impressive ruin. The death of her husband, King Ihor, is finally revenged. It won't bring her peace though, because it is known that Olga will never marry again. Was it an overkill then? Not at all. In the ancient Slavic world there was a saying, "Who doesn't revenge can be revenged by God." Thus, vengeance was extremely respected by Slavians, and Olga undoubtedly deserved her respect. The history remembers Olga of Kyiv as a wise and powerful ruler who brought up another king, Sviatoslav the Brave. Her son was famous for his courage. He accomplished numerous successful conquests and died in battle like a true warrior. But it's a completely different story. As for Olga, until this day, almost 1200 years since she was born, this woman remains well remembered and respected by modern Ukrainians, as well as the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Within the armed forces of Ukraine, she is considered a divine protector of the UAV forces and is often portrayed surrounded by drones. Her love was so deep, so even the greatest vengeance could not fill the gap left in her soul after the murder of her beloved husband. In the end, when we lose somebody we love more than life, the only thing that remains is vengeance. But does it bring salvation?